Welcome back to Resistance Chicks. We are your hosts, Leah and Michelle. Today is July 11th, 2017, and we want to bring you some more on the G20 summit, specifically the violence that happened.
It was insane, you guys. At least almost 500 police officers were injured. These leftist crazies were coming from all over Europe. They were masked.
Look at that mess.
Black.
Why? Looting? That means stealing.
They just would... I mean, look, thousands of people.
This is not how you get a point across.
Somebody on our Facebook had said, well, maybe it was about maybe 40 people or so. And I'm just like, no, the numbers are more like 8,000. Here's another. This is, I don't know if that's the same one, but let's see. I have another one where they're looting. Here's where they just went through and burned like every car on the street.
And why? I mean, those are innocent people. You don't know what their political stance is. Maybe they're on your side, you idiots.
People in Hamburg were saying that it was like a civil war that had
It's insanity.
It was terrorism. It literally is terrorism. And I want to take you to the this RT article. Here we go.
Angela Merkel is under pressure following the unprecedented violence at anti-G20 protests in Hamburg. The country's president says Germany has not witnessed such brutality in years.
Wow.
We have not had violence of such magnitude at demonstrations in Germany in recent years. There were apparently some who acted ruthlessly and destructively against police forces and also against the property of ordinary citizens.
Well, German police were out in force, but over 20,000 of them struggled to contain protesters, with hundreds of officers left injured. Security forces in Hamburg face criticism for failing to cope with the chaos of the rallies. Well, this video shows violent protesters in black masks throwing chairs and fireworks through shop windows, with apparently no sign of any police officers to contain the march. Well, images of burning cars and streets awash with debris.
I want to read you some of these highlights. Reuters even said, Germans angry over orgy of violence at Merkel's pre-election G20. Hamburg destroyed. G20 protest like civil war. Half the city is burning. Hamburg rocked by a violent anti-G20 protest. And those are from Reuters and even HuffPost.
He left locals shocked. International media outlets echoed those thoughts. These are some of the headlines on show. Chancellor Merkel condemned the violence, while many German protesters stressed that the left-wing radical protests had been underestimated.
Die entfesselte Gewalt und ungehemmte Brutalität, auf die die Polizei in diesen Tagen des G20-Gipfels immer wieder getroffen ist, verurteile ich auf das Schärfste. Es gibt nicht die geringste Rechtfertigung für Plünderungen, Brandstiftungen, brutale Angriffe.
Can I just say that I love RT? Because everything they share is like entertainment.
Those German police don't mess around, do they?
The extreme terror in Hamburg was repulsive and as bad as terror from right-wing extremists and Islamists. Right-wing extremists.
Can I say something? These are all what you would call your French Foreign Legion mercenaries.
Yeah.
Being paid for.
Right.
By George Soros.
Is an international criminal attacking all these different countries with his army of mercenaries.
Yep.
Each country should arrest him and put him in jail for war, starting a war with each country.
Yes.
I don't know if you guys have the tape of Boston where they have pictures of buses after buses of buses.
We don't have that right up right now, but
Alex Jones has it. They have pictures on the 8th just recently. This weekend. This guy,
buses of people being brought in because they were paid by George Soros.
George Soros paid for it all. It's an army of foreign legions, but of course he goes to colleges, gets people who need some money, and who are violent.
Right.
And gets them to do this.
It's insanity.
It's a war crime. You know, it's not a grassroots effort.
Right.
Well, as the dust settles in Hamburg following the G20, volunteers have been helping to clean up the streets and restore shopfronts.
Imagine.
Analysts we talked to say violent leftist groups have been in the area for years, but nothing was done about it.
The left wing commits much more physical violence than the right wing. This is something we know over years, and we see it for many years, and nothing has changed yet.
Definitely there has been much more violence on behalf of left-wing extremists, but it's also a certain difference in the targets, of course, that they choose. It is a violence now that we have seen in Hamburg, which is really like a senseless, meaningless. It just looks for media appearance. It just wants to shock.
Exactly what it is.
To shock. And that's exactly
They know
what
they're not
going
to get anything done.
Right, exactly. So 500 police injured in protests. CNN called it eclectic. A total of 476 police officers were injured during the G20 riots in Hamburg last week, and now political leaders across Germany have vowed to take better steps to identify and combat left-wing terrorism.
Now, I want to interrupt you right there.
By George Soros.
If there were a total of 476 police officers that were injured, and it was only about 100 people or protesters that showed up, there wouldn't be that amount of injuries in the police officers. There were thousands upon thousands of people there, and that's why the amount of police officers injured is that high.
The riots in Hamburg, which lasted for several days, saw the city lit on fire and police officers from all over Germany injured by far-left extremists. The riot led to large-scale condemnation by many political leaders and calls for the social democratic mayor of Hamburg to actually even resign. Sydney, you need to calm down, Sydney. Shh. The leader of the SPD and the former European Parliament President Martin Schulz said the rioters' actions displayed the characteristics of terrorism. CNN called the protests eclectic and international. Such small-minded skirmishes are the business of people who took a whole city hostage for their dim-wittedness in an almost terrorist manner. This isn't dim-wittedness.
I hadn't really pressed the record button. I think that's why it went. Weird.
So I wanted to show you a little bit more of the stores being looted, people just laughing, oh, people just hanging out, it's just a nice party. I mean, just such devastation and
childishness.
What boggles my mind is like everybody's all like climate change, but this is pollution.
They're upset because at the G20 summit, President Trump still wouldn't sign or come together with the climate agreement, and yet this is really destroying the earth, destroying your city. I don't understand. Even if it's not your city, it's destroying other people's property. I have never understood that. When I was a kid, how many of you had friends that would like carve on a bench or something like that? That would never occur to me to deface something that wasn't mine. My brain can't go there. Especially when you're trying to make a point, it really just proves the opposite. It proves that you're children and crazy people.
So yeah, I do believe that these were probably bussed in and paid by George Soros, and I understand that George Soros takes advantage of each kind of situation, and this welcome to hell. They were, and kind of what I really wanted to talk about was a lot of these socialists and progressives on our Facebook were saying, well, you don't get attention with peaceful protests. And when you're trying to protest capitalism, and this is not the way. So I want you to watch this real quick. And then I want to give you answers on if you have real legitimate issues, there are ways that don't include such devastation and destruction of other people's property. And literally, like, somebody commented something about like taking out all the police or something.
So all the progressive progressives and that were saying that, not all of the progressives, but all of the progressives that were saying something like that on the Facebook page, I'm going to assume that you don't have children. You may, but I'm just going to assume that you don't, because if you did and you were to tell your children, listen, I understand that sometimes if you can't get your point across to me, it's okay for you to set our car on fire or to loot our house and destroy our windows and break them, because that's how sometimes if you can't get a point across, you do need to just take violent actions into your own hands to make sure that mom and dad hear what you got to say. So I'm going to assume that you don't have kids, or else you would never have said something so ignorant.
I like what Peter said on our Facebook, and he's more lefty leaning. This is what you get when children are not taught right from wrong.
Thank you.
Is what happens in every country where Christianity has been replaced by making each person their own God. Egomania and narcissism. Unchecked, this behavior will cause great damage, both spiritually and materially, on both personal and societal levels. And somebody says, this isn't because of a lack of Christianity and the blank holes in robes claiming moral superiority. Peter says, sorry, but no, Christianity is about blessing, giving, forgiveness, peace, and love. When those things are removed, then a vacuum is created. And this vacuum is being filled by cursing, fear, selfishness, materialism, fear, and hate. When those lower ideas and behaviors are allowed, then there will be a great damage to society. Oh, you only have to look back in history of the world to confirm what I'm saying. This has happened many times before. We must not allow this to happen again. And he says, may God open your eyes. And then somebody else, this is the argument that go back and forth. Yes, because Christian societies are such true peacemongers, death penalty, police brutality, endless wars. I love what Peter just, he really hit him. Most of those who claim to be Christian are not. Christ warned us of false prophets. He says, I'm fully awake. I clearly understand those things you have described have nothing to do with Christ's words and works. I see all the evil things where wolves do and claim a connection to Christ. Which is interesting because I just wanted to read his words because there's exact same words I would use. The people that fought back and forth, you know, Peter again says, when did Germany become a third world country? And somebody says, when the UN took over the country after World War II, you have no idea the stuff that they are taught to Germans at school, how you can get arrested for criticizing the government, and that's actually true. Paul says, what amazes me is seeing people getting all snowflakey over a few fires and broken glass in Germany. Was that just a few fires and a little broken glass?
No.
This G20 pushback propels some partisan GOPers into sky is falling mode after they and their mirror image fellow partisan Dem supporters have been going years snoring and yawning as secular nations are usurped with the help of our jihadi allies. By our hands, millions of indigenous are dead, and this is true. However, it doesn't negate wrong. Doesn't equal out wrong.
Well, once again, though, I have to interject here. The reason we have, just to remind you guys, so many progressives and kind of some liberals on our Facebook page is because of an article that Caitlin Johnstone wrote wanting to have the right and left join together to take down the deep state. Unfortunately, our progressive and liberal friends, some of them, not all of them, have decided that that's an impossibility because they're constantly accusing those of us that call out wrong on either side, and they lump us together because that argument about what happened with the UN, guess what? We as sort of right-wing leaning people say it's wrong too. So why is it that you as a leftist or a progressive can't call out the wrong when the liberals and leftists do it, but we can so easily call out the wrong when the right-wing conservatives do it? I find an imbalance here that's hypocritical.
Caitlin Johnson wrote a really good article about the left and right coming together, and I was really excited to see so many people. But it's really, it's cut and dry. It's black and white. You either can work together,
right,
or you see people on the right as racist, homophobic, xenophobic, crazy people. But what's interesting here is Nathaniel says, don't say it's anarchist or blame it on unchristian people. The truth is many governments are direct extensions of our corrupt form of government and are suppressing and killing their own people. And then he goes on to quote that whenever any form of government becomes destructive to its ends, it is the right of people to alter, abolish it. And this is true. And he goes on to quote the Declaration of Independence. However, rioting and looting stores is not abolishing your government. This is where your mind is so broken.
It's the French Revolution.
It's the French Revolution. The French Revolution, you guys, saw people with guillotines, saw people. You can't fight corruption with corruption. You can't fight violence with a violent hatred in your heart. And those people, when they're setting off fireworks, looting stores, that is not how the American Revolution started.
Unfortunately,
the American Revolution was about fighting to take back our country from foreign invaders.
Exactly. And unfortunately, because many of the progressives and liberals, and I don't want any of you out there that are agreeing with us to take this personally, but a lot of you can't really see the corruption of the public school and the brainwashing that happened when you were a kid, how our history was literally erased. And you never learned it. What you didn't learn was during the Revolutionary War and prior to that, every single American that chose to fight for freedom and for America to be birthed as a country took it very seriously. A lot of them, almost all of them, went before God in prayer, and they didn't want war. They wanted, and they tried, 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 and they tried to do it peacefully. But then, when they knew that they were going to have to declare war, which is essentially what the Declaration of Independence was, a declaration of war, they still did it in a peaceful, calm, assertive manner. This is none of that. Right. You're not submitting any kind of document saying, listen, and then you're gathering troops and having an organized assembly. That's not at all what is happening here. This is mania. There's nothing.
There's a difference between anarchy and, like, maybe in Venezuela, where they are going to need to rise up and take their government back. Right? They're going to need to do something. That's because.
But they should do it in the same manner that the Revolutionary War
What is different? What
happened.
the American exceptionalism is they were men and women who were righteous and holy and good and kind and loving and merciful, who said, we have to protect our families. We have to protect our country. We can't continue to be overthrown and, taken over by, a foreign land and a foreign government. It's like if Russia were to come in, we would kick Russia out, right?
What happened with our founding fathers is they met the enemy on the battlefield mano a mano. This is a coward's act. They did not meet and destroy other people's property when they threw the tea into the Boston Harbor. That was not the same thing that is happening with these individual shop owners and destroying their property or setting individual cars on fire. That was tea that was coming in from England. Okay, before it had even gotten to a personal person.
Right, exactly. So here's some practical steps that you can take. If you care about the environment, if you care about a lot of people hate capitalism, and it was a march against capitalism. Listen, Michelle and I speak against crony capitalism all the time long. But we're not going to go into the streets and start breaking up stores and breaking down windows, okay? Right. Every single one of you, before you go marching in the streets, before you go doing your thing, pull every one of your children out of the government indoctrinating schools.
Yes.
You decry capitalism, but the children are in your capitalist schools.
Yes.
I don't want to hear anything from you. If you keep if you say something, anything against the deep state, anything against capitalism, and you put your children in public schools, you have absolutely no leg to stand on. I'm not even going to listen to you speak because you do not actually care about your subject. Because the capitalist, it's a capitalist socialist group actually in public schools. So that's where the right and the left come together. It's brainwashing children to keep going along with the deep state, which is the left and the right are one. They have a right wing and they have a left wing.
It's the same bird.
It's capitalism and it's socialism, okay? And they rule us all, and the way that they do it is they divide us into two groups, the capitalist group and the socialist group, and they manipulate us from one to the other, and they start it as kids in public schools. And so first, if you want to take down the capitalist and the socialist, then you pull your kids out of public schools.
But Leah, they can't do that because public schools is a socialist program, and a lot of the progressives believe that you need the government socialism.
But they're teaching your kids all of the capitalism that they need. They go to school, get a job, get a 401k, get an IRA, get your house, get a great job, get into the capitalist system, okay? But they teach also socialism, so that's why the right-wing people have to get their kids out. It's you guys, the operandum of the deep state is public school. And that is bottom line.
And before anybody leaves a comment saying that they can't do it, our mom was a single mom and she worked 4 jobs and she did it.
And here, the next
and we lived in government housing, which is unfortunate. We didn't have any other. If that's what you got to do to pull your kids out of public school, if that's the government handout that you have to take the government handout of government housing versus having them indoctrinate your children.
Yeah, it's cheaper anyways. Okay, and then the next thing you do is take your food back into your own hands.
Yes.
Start your garden, grow your own stuff.
Yep.
Don't talk to me about climate change when you're buying strawberries from California, mangoes from Venezuela, and
even if they are organic.
And squash from China.
Yep.
You are polluting the atmosphere with your carbon footprint. Okay, so don't talk to me about climate change when you're driving an hour to and from work.
Right.
Okay? You want carbon taxes. The only thing that whole government when they get together, the Paris Peace Climate Accord was about taxing people for their carbon footprint.
It's not about actually making any changes. It's not about making it legal for people to garden in their own yard or raise their own animals or do any of the things that would make it so that we would lessen our carbon footprint. It's all about money. It has nothing to do with actually changing the climate. You idiots. I'm sorry, you idiots. I said it. We're going to sign off here because we're too long. All right, this is Leah Michelle for Resistance Chicks, where it's not a conspiracy theory if it's the truth. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. To Mass Faith 3 and Resistance Chicks. Ring the bell for notifications. Find us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. You know we love you. God loves you, and God bless. And I'm only talking idiots to those of you that are. Most of our viewers are not. Love you.
I was cold all alone. No place for home every day. So afraid. But you go.